Hey there everybody, welcome back to the final update for Rule of Rose. Well, this time around we get to see Jennifer for what she truly is, a very, very young child. The image we were seeing before was just her own imagination. We also find our final storybook here, Once Upon a Time. This particular storybook is actually fairly different from what we've seen, mostly due to its complete lack of words. Yeah, this time around it is purely a picture book, and the story it tells is, well, let's say symbolic of the overall issues between Jennifer and Wendy. It shows us the, friendship between two young girls, and the inevitable restraint that comes between their friendship. That is until what appears to be a tiny puppy catches the attention of one, and that particular girl runs off while the other girl is left all alone. That, in a nutshell, is kinda what happened. It is not actually directly what happened, let's go with that. But there is plenty of backstory to be gotten in this particular chapter. This is kind of a bonus chapter, but it does get us the actual ending of the game. And what we come across first after that storybook is a series of letters between Wendy and Jennifer from when Jennifer was actually being held captive by Gregory Wilson that we saw earlier in the Gingerbread House chapter. Now, it is from these letters that we get more about this oath and promise that they kept between each other. And, well, things start out rather friendly. That is until when Jennifer kind of introduces the puppy between them. Now, it may seem like a puppy isn't really that big of a deal, but for Wendy it was a very massive deal. Apparently, when for all of her time at the orphanage here, Wendy did not have a lot of friends, and once she became pretty attached to Jennifer, she did not want to share Jennifer whatsoever. And it was at that time that, I guess, Jennifer really started to spend more time with Brown, and Wendy kind of took it pretty poorly. And, well, Jennifer kind of understood that Wendy was a fairly lonely girl, but she was still kind of hoping they could reconcile the whole, sharing of Jennifer idea. She also says that she wonders if the letters ever reached Wendy. Seems like they still had some correspondence while at the orphanage, but maybe there's some deeper meaning there. Maybe she was wondering if the actual messages reached into Wendy's brain. But as of right now, all of the orphanage is actually open to us. We can go into any and every room. And actually quite a few of them have little, flavored texts. Pretty much all of them, actually. But they just kind of go over the ideas and themes of a child's imagination. And that's really what this game is all about. It's about children's imaginations, how far they can stretch, and how dangerous they can become. But we can investigate all this graffiti, all these doodles we've seen on the floor. Seems that one of the more rambunctious children was prone to write on everything. I think it's alluded to that this was more than likely Thomas, but it's never directly stated. But our first place to venture is the sewing room. This was the favorite hangout of Amanda, the poor small-hearted princess. From what I've been able to gather, Amanda, while not exactly a naturally cruel person, was kind of driven to that mostly due to the badgering and pestering of all the other children. From what we gain here from what Jennifer says, she actually seemed to have a lot of fun and was pretty satisfied when she was just by herself sewing. But you can't live a solitary lifestyle as a human. You actually have to interact, and in that interaction, well, she was introduced to the hierarchy of the aristocrat club, to which she was pretty much always at the bottom of. Kind of a sad state of affairs for Amanda. Things might have been able to turn out different for her if this whole club hadn't popped up. Now, I'll only be going to the rooms with the major characters. This next room, the library, was the favorite haunt of Meg, the glasses-wearing smart princess. We also remember that she had something of an affection towards this stuffed goat, as was shown in the Goat Sisters chapter. And by examining this stuffed goat, we go over the fact that, as stated before, Meg had a serious crush on Diane. I can't really say it was something of a, sexual affection. It might have been closer to just a respect, a looking upon of a bigger sister, if you will. Not so much, they wanted to do anything. They're children. There's no reason to put some horrible spin on it. But in the end, Meg's affections toward Diane were always, met with a lot of scorn. And I'm sure that confused Meg to no end, as Diane would just kind of blame it on other things. As we saw, it was actually kind of blamed in the end on Jennifer, which inevitably, I think, got her locked inside of an onion bag with a lot of unpleasant items. Yeah, the game really focuses on the ability and the knack of, children and also adults to put these, horrible spins and lies to everything to get their way or to make other people suffer. And really, the happiest people we saw in the game seem to have plenty of other problems, such as the train-loving Thomas here. From what we've been able to gather in the game, he almost seemed to have some mental deficiency, some mild autism possibly. All he ever seemed to care about were his trains. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, he never did anything inherently evil in the game, outside of, I think he was the one that always slammed the door in our face or locked us into rooms. A rather odd note there at the end saying that his obsession with trains might have been due to something that happened at his birth. Nothing ever comes of that particular note, so it's just kind of left out there in the open. But really, in the end, it's not so much the inherent evilness of children that this game wants to expound upon, but rather, possibly that children are just mimicking what they see and learn of adults. I mean, a lot of this was just meant to be a children's game. The whole aristocracy and trying to mimic of the, monarchies that the children learned about in their schooling. Or sometimes the children were exposed to things that they really just should not have been learning about. I mean, in the case of Clara here, something was definitely going on between her and Mr. Hoffman, and there has been plenty of really atrocious theories regarding it, such as the fact that they may have been indulging in some kind of sexual interaction, and especially with some of the theories I read regarding the mermaid princess fight, such as the vomiting possibly being due to morning sickness from, I guess, Mr. Hoffman impregnating Clara. Yeah, that's really unpleasant to think about, but there is the possibility. There's the strong possibility. And really, from, Jennifer's viewpoint, she would have had no idea what was going on. The only thing we have is from her viewpoint. But here in this particular sick room, where we had visited Wendy so many times before as she was bedridden and sickly, we find even more letters between Wendy and Jennifer. And it seems that quite a few of the letters that Jennifer had sent to Wendy had actually reached her. But we get the opposing viewpoint this time from Jennifer, who we initially find out, made promises to Wendy. But more importantly, we find out that for some odd reason, Gregory Wilton became horribly attached to her, almost picturing her as his son Joshua, who had gone missing beforehand. It's not really covered in the game, but Jennifer actually somehow fell from an airship that was crashing as it made its way from Cardington, and she had fallen into a field, and somehow Gregory had happened upon her, brought her back to his house, and was taking care of her in such a way that he saw fit in his mildly distorted mind. Wendy happened upon her and actually freed her and brought her back to the orphanage where she was being taken care of. And, things were kind of going okay between Wendy and Jennifer. That is, until Jennifer was so happy she found a cute little puppy that she named Brown. She was very happy about him. He was a cute little puppy that would respond and, lick her face, do all the things that puppies would do. But for some reason, Wendy just was not really happy with it. Wendy was very adamant that it was just a filthy and dirty dog and that it had no right to, get the attention of Jennifer. And here we see, it kind of becomes confusing just because it's very small at the top there, that it goes from saying, from J to W, it now says from W to J. Wendy was very, very, very against the dog. She kind of felt that Jennifer owed her after she was freed from that man's house. But, I don't know. Jennifer just didn't see it as such a strong connection. She didn't really understand why she couldn't just be shared, I suppose, between the dog and Wendy. And really, it's difficult to say what caused Wendy to, become so obsessed with Jennifer. I mean, we don't get too much of a backstory about, Wendy's upbringing, but she became very, very, very obsessed with Jennifer. And out here on the balcony, we find Eleanor's bird cage. Probably the oddest thing that we find in regards to Eleanor and the bird cage is the fact that the bird is actually just a doll. More than likely, there was never a real bird in the first place. So, was that crushed bird we saw earlier just a past memory, or were we just actually crushing poor Eleanor's fantasy world? Kind of hard to say. I mean, she could have got the doll as a replacement for the dead bird. There could have never been a bird in the first place. All we know is that Eleanor's dreams will never come to fruition because she's dead. And something we have to realize about all these people as we go from room to room is that they're all dead. Now, I want to make a quick jump down to Martha's room. There wasn't too much down here in the previous chapters, but we actually find a rather interesting set of letters here. Seems that Martha was actually communicating with the local police before. And what was she communicating to them with or about? Well, it was about Gregory Wilson. It seems that she was, I guess, not in the knowledge that Jennifer had previously been imprisoned of sorts by Gregory, but instead that Gregory was just kind of stalking about the orphanage, and it made Martha rather uncomfortable. But the police didn't really see a problem with it. They just figured that Mr. Wilson was rather lonely after losing his son, and that he wasn't actually kidnapping anyone. He was just, well, a broken and lonely father. But it seems that a month after receiving the letter from the local constable, Martha sent yet another rather disturbing letter. It seems that Mr. Wilson was still coming around the orphanage and, well, was paying a lot of attention to Wendy. Or at least Wendy was paying a lot of attention to Mr. Wilson. Yeah, it seems that Wendy had started her dog training of sorts with Mr. Wilson, and it was making Martha fairly uncomfortable for what I assume to be really, really obvious reasons. And we all saw the outcome of that as Mr. Wilson proceeded to rampage and murder all the children of the orphanage in his underwear. But after reading these letters, Jennifer has a rather odd sentiment that maybe all of this could have been avoided if Martha had just been a little bit more forward and made a little bit more effort to communicate with everybody. Maybe she would have learned about Mr. Wilson and his actual relations with Jennifer and Wendy. But our next destination is down in the basement. I think this particular room is the Cell of Solitude. I didn't visit it before, mostly due to there being nothing of real relevance in here. But by visiting this particular room in this particular chapter, we find that, I guess, Diane seemed to frequent this particular room. And we also learn that Diane's particular hang-up was that, well, being the most mature at the orphanage, she felt the most, aged, I suppose, the most robust, and thus she wanted to, feel what adults feel, but not deal with the aging that adults have to deal with, the inevitable wrinkles and death. Yet again, she will never ultimately feel that because she's dead. And there is one other room I want to visit rather quickly down here, another one of these cells. Because in this rather odd little workshop down here, we see a whole cadre of odd dolls. And actually, these are those imps that we've been hounded by throughout the game. Still not exactly sure if they were just personifications or symbolic of the other children. I mean, especially the goat sister imps, the pig imps. They all seem to be rather indicative of, certain mindsets of each one of the children. But they seemed rather numerous, and they seemed rather deadly to Jennifer throughout the entire game. And it's kind of hard to tell if the wording here from Jennifer and the fact that she blames herself for their appearance is more just her, feeling overall guilt for what happened, or if she actually somehow manifested them. I mean, were they truly imaginary, or was she the only one seeing them? Could be. Our final destination in the orphanage is the headmaster's room. You see that the fish in the fish tank actually is not dead. It's a bit amazing, a bit weird. But our main point of interest is actually hidden away here in the closet itself. And it may be fairly hard to find. It's hidden away over here in a corner, and it may seem, well, initially nothing, but from what Jennifer says, it brings up some rather odd questions. Seems that instead of Mr. Hoffman being murdered by imps or murdered by us. Seems like he just ran away one day. And Jennifer goes on to talk about some difficult decision he had to make and how expectations were too high and that something he wanted could just not be attained. Now, if this is alluding to his relations with Clara or some of the other students here or something else completely different, it's rather hard to say, but it was enough to cause Mr. Hoffman to completely abandon the orphanage. Just a lot of unanswered questions, lots of innuendo abounding, but especially with the overall sepia tone and the fact that when we actually see Jennifer for what she is, it's kind of hard to determine, well, if we are still just in a fantasy right now. I mean, did Gregory actually kill everybody? Has any of this actually been going on at all? Now, out in the front yard, we see Wendy as we remember her. Not as that ghastly boy, but as our friend. But the rose-tinted glasses are not facts. And the face of innocence that we see before us is just a memory. And it's a memory we have to leave behind. I am sorry it had to be this way, Wendy. But with that, we can now leave the orphanage behind, go back down the pathway that we first found ourselves on leading up to the orphanage. And as we make our way down the pathway, and as we get closer and closer to the fork, the stillness of the air gives way to a rather familiar sound. It sounds like the whimpering of a dog. And so I decided to see if there was anything new regarding the broken sign. And there is a new message, even though it's pretty disheartening. And that's that, well, Jennifer and probably all the children came to realize that nobody was coming to get them. But before we head down to where I know the obvious whimpering is coming from, I did want to take a quick check of the bus stop. And what do we find at the bus stop but our story-writing, broken-hearted father, Gregory Wilson, still working hard on his stories for his son. Yeah, even though he was our final boss, he was never really a villain. Just a poor, twisted, lonely man. And all he really wanted was to make Jennifer happy. Just like he wanted to make his son Joshua happy. Really, there's no helping him. He's just a ghost. He's just an illusion. But let's go ahead and head to our final destination of the game. That rickety shed. It does make me wonder, though, where those whimpering sounds could be originating from. I mean, when we first came to the rickety shed, with this unlocked door, it was just empty, outside of a single dog's collar. And what's waiting for us inside but the true image of Brown? Yes, much like Jennifer's appearance throughout the game, Brown was also, well, living under an imaginary appearance. And our trusty friend Bucket Knight is here to help us finish out the game. Even though we have to leave all this behind, it doesn't mean that we should ever forget any of it. And it definitely means that we should never forget the promise we made. The promise we made to Wendy, the promise we made to Brown, and the promise we actually made to ourselves. And there we have it. We have reached the end of Rule of Rose. A lot of strong imagery, a lot of strong symbolism in the game. I really think it had a great story that was pretty horribly marred by its gameplay. But hopefully you all enjoy the trip through this forgotten PS2 game. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Hopefully you all join me next time. I want to thank everybody that followed the thread and followed the videos. And hopefully you'll join me next time. This is Niggeroth saying bye.
Want you be dead when I'm in bed. I can be so mean, you can beat me. I would like to shame you, I would like to blame you, just because of my love to you. And love itself is just as innocent as roses in May. I know nothing can drive it away. Though love itself is just as brief as a candle in the wind that is greedy, just like sea. Alone but sane, I am a love suicide, 'cause love itself is just as brief as a candle in the wind. It is pure white, just like sea. Alone but sane, I am a love suicide, 'cause love itself is just as innocent as roses in May. It is pure white, just like sea.